But anyway, so I was going to say that we've had some incredible developments over the last few years, and I'm several centuries old. And when I was at school, we used a thing called a slide rule. Did anyone use a slide rule? You know what I mean by that? Probably most people here won't. You know. It was a thing that we were taught to use because in my day we didn't have calculators. We didn't even have calculators. And the slide rule was invented 340 years ago by, I think it was invented by Napier, was it Napier? Mathematician. And the only thing that changed in between when this guy 340 years ago invented the slide rule and when I was using it at school is that it was made out of plastic instead of wood. Anyway, I think we're live now. So welcome to everybody. Thanks ever so much for coming. Obviously people are watching this all around the world and they might not realise that I think today is the hottest day of the year in Berlin. The whole of Europe is enjoying or suffering from this, depending on your point of view. But I'll leave it to you to work out which of those we're doing in this room that isn't air conditioned. So I'm just incredibly pleased that so many people have come out and it's going to be worth your while because we've got an incredible panel here. Let me just introduce you. We have Mark Risby, who is the CTO of a well-known company in the UK for supplying the kind of products you're looking at here, Digibox, and there's also another name, isn't there?
So I'm representing Bird Dog here today.
Yeah, yep. That's right. So, and Liam, who's here with Newtech, they've supplied a lot of the technology that we're going to be talking about. Alex Hoburn is a celebrated master of social media, and what's the connection between social media and streaming? It's simply that you can have the best stream in the world, but if nobody knows it's there, nobody's going to see it. And so how do we build engagement? How do we build engaging content? We'll be talking about that. Julia Young, who's sitting next to me, is going to show us something which is shouldn't be possible. We'll come on to that in a minute. So let's just kick off with me just explaining for everyone, not just the people in the room, but everyone who's watching this, why we're doing this. Over the last few decades, we've become used to technology increasing, well, it's exponential. In some cases, it's more than exponential when you throw artificial intelligence into the equation. So maybe 15 years ago, we had standard definition television, and now 8K is a thing. It's not just a distant glow on the horizon. You can buy 8K TVs in, Cardiff. That seems incredible. So you might not have worked this out, but 8K television has 85 times the number of pixels of standard definition. That's how far we've come in the last few years. And of course, you get additional data, bandwidth requirements, bigger files. In some ways, it makes it harder to do. So how is it that despite it becoming harder to do these things with these higher resolutions, that we actually can do far more? And the answer is when you add all these technologies together, it means that they're all conspiring to give you more powerful things to work with. So, and sometimes these things take off with like a viral effect. Just look at the internet. The fact that we have this standard, which is like TCP/IP, HTML, and then you have the social media platforms. I think we're streaming this on YouTube. And it's just there to be used. So that's why we're here to talk about content creation and how you use your talents in content creation alongside the technology and how to get that stuff out there and get it seen. But we've never been at a place like this before where we can sit here in a room where we've been setting up for maybe 3 hours. It's a multi-camera shoot. There'll be no fuss, no panics. Well, I wouldn't say no panics. There's always a panic. And we're now out there for the whole world. And how could we have done that 15 years ago, even 10 years ago? We'd have needed an outside broadcast truck with probably 10 million euros worth of gear in it. So first of all, I just want to explain, use our panelists to explain how we're doing this, because we're doing this in a way that I don't think many people have even thought about being able to do it yet. If you look around, and I invite you to look as closely as you can, and obviously people at home can't do this, but take our word for it, there are no video cables in the room. And let me just go straight to Liam, who's going to explain how we're doing that.
Yeah, so I mean, everything in the room that we're using today is using Newtek's NDI protocol. So we launched that in about 2015. And every camera, every screen, every device in here, our VIP production system at the back of the room as well.
So let's just explain what on the network. NDI is. It sounds a bit like SDI, and I think that was probably intentional. But NDI is a way of putting video signals on a network and essentially letting the network sort it all out.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So everything is just compressed down, and so we can carry many streams of video and audio over single Ethernet cables. Yeah. We're not using anything complicated. When you say compression,
a lot of people, that strikes fear into people's heart. And I think what I'd say to people is have a look at the quality of the pictures. They are like fully broadcast quality. If you're from the production industry, you're used to working with ProRes, it's a bit like having ProRes on a network. It's totally broadcast quality. And the philosophical way to look at compression is it actually increases quality. And let me explain what I mean by that. It increases the quality of what you can do with a given technology. So if you have a cable, you can send like one full quality video signal down it. But with compression, you can maybe send 10 full quality video signals down it. Or if you've got really low bandwidth, you can send a picture that is 10 times the quality that you could have done without compression. So if any of you are from a broadcast background say, look, we don't deal with compression because it ruins the quality of the pictures, this is very mild compression. Have a look at the quality and what you can do. The output from this could be on any national broadcast channel. It's that good. So this is an incredible technology that squeezes multiple signals down a network cable.
Yeah, and we're bringing all the different products here together as well. So we've got Bird Dog's converters helping us convert cameras and deliver the screens. But
so that's the next.
Yeah, we're bringing all these different technologies together, but we've not actually done any network configuration here. We're not asking anything complicated. We have internet coming in and out to provide us with our stream to YouTube. Every other device has automatically assigned itself on the network. It's announced itself, and it's been available for us to use. We've not done anything high-level technical here to put this together today either, which is quite a key part of what we do.
So, Mark, let's talk a little bit about Bird Dog, because they make very powerful, essentially black boxes. But what role do they play in this setup?
Well, without Newtek, there would be no Bird Dog in this sense. So NDI, when that came out in, say, 2015, it was a great way of connecting all these different things together if they worked with NDI. Now, the problem is there's a whole load of cameras and other equipment, monitors and things out there that currently don't support NDI. So Bird Dog came out with a chip, an implementation inside a chip that allowed us to do NDI in hardware so that we could take a box and put it on the back of a camera, and now that camera is now an NDI camera.
So, I mean, just to underline the importance of that, which is that you can take any camera and connect it via a Bird Dog adapter into the NDI network. So you don't need to buy special cameras to work with NDI. Any camera will work, and that's an incredibly powerful thing. It works the other way as well. If you want to, like that monitor is connected to a Bird Dog converter, taking the signals out of the NDI network. And, just think about that for a minute. How many cables have we avoided having to use by doing this? Because it's all the same network. There's just one network cable. And it's just incredible. So we're on the threshold of a completely new way of doing things. Now, I just quickly want to explain what is the difference between having video on a network and streaming. Because streaming is video on a network as well, but it's a different thing. So video on a network for what we're doing is so that we can simplify and make more powerful the process of making a TV program, essentially. You can do it for less money, you can do it with less configuration, you can set it up much more quickly and still get results. And you can do stuff that you couldn't do before. So it's really the way forward. It's everybody is going to do this. And NDI has become so popular, it's kind of got a life of its own now, isn't it? Is it like there are 1,000 partners, manufacturing partners?
I mean, we know about 11,000 people that downloaded our developer kit because developing with NDI is royalty-free. So anybody can take that and build their own software. But we know of around 1,000 different products out there at the moment that are either on the market or in development that are all interoperable with everything else that works within the NDI protocol.
So just in case you start looking at this, you want to learn more about the subject, it's only fair to say that there are other ways of doing video over a network, but they tend to be very kind of high-end. There's SMPTE
2110.
Yeah.
2110. And that really is for high-end broadcasters who want everything uncompressed and have got like hundreds of thousands of euros to spend on everything. So NDI does pretty much everything else, doesn't it?
I'd argue to say it does a bit more.
Yeah.
So if you look at where 2110 and the SMPTE standards go, they're amazing. They do a lot. They're uncompressed, and that's something we work with and we're interoperable with.
Yeah.
But they require a lot of setup. They require timing. They require lots of other protocols to make them work. With NDI, it has just about everything built in.
Yep.
So it's got tallies built in, audio, self-discovery. So if I plug an NDI device in, say we've got a camera over here, the P200 camera, I plug that into the network, Brian on the switcher presses a button and it says P200 camera available. It just shows up and says, hello, I'm here. Yeah. And that's zero configuration.
We're doing that. We're doing that with multiple vendor cameras as well. So we've got Bird Dog's camera, we have our own PTZ. Yeah. We're adapting a Sony camera here today, but they've just joined in with the NDI system as well. And then down here at the front, our confidence monitor is just a standard PC laptop with a free software tool. And we can now use that to look at any of these devices. If Dave wants to have a look at one of the cameras directly, we can just switch that over if we want, and it's there immediately. And you can't do that with these uncompressed protocols yet.
So now, just to explain the difference between what we're doing in this room and the stream, you need to have, so the video goes into the switcher where the cameras are switched, zoomed, and generally all the different threads are put together into a finished video stream that can then go out to the rest of the world. So to do that, you need to have an encoder. In this case, we're using the NewTek TriCaster to generate the actual stream that's going out on the internet. You can do it in any number of ways. It's a good idea to have a reliable encoder, because if that doesn't work, then nothing works. And if you get it right, you can have wonderful looking pictures. And when you go home, you can look on YouTube and see what this looks like. So that's the whole process. And you're very welcome to ask us questions about that. We'll have room for questions towards the end of this. But I want to come on to the next part now, which is the creative side. And first, we're going to come to Alex in a minute, but I just want to ask Julia if you can show us what you have here. And it's a product called Adobe Character Animator.
Yeah, of course. Can I borrow the microphone? I'm going to do the awkward switch around. So Adobe Character Animator, it's a way of animating live on broadcast or stream online. It's been done for both. The quality is good enough for both. So
you'll need to look at that monitor over there.
Yes, we've got a mixer now, so you can see exactly what's on this laptop screen here. So this is a basic Adobe Character Animator rig that you can just download straight away. The software comes with the rest of the Adobe package, so if you have the package, then you've already got this piece of software which you can mess around with. So you'll see she is tracking me, so as I move side to side, she's moving side to side. And it starts to get really cool when you get really into the rigging, because you'll notice her hair is dangling as well. So these little subtle bits of animation, which take a lot of time if you're animating traditionally, it's literally just doing that from the webcam. Then, to add to that, you see she's talking, she's lip syncing, she's just hearing what I am saying through that laptop microphone. You can get it even cleaner if you've got a microphone plugged into the machine, but that is really genuinely good enough. And then it gets even more fun as well. So at the moment, she's just moving using the webcam, but you can also start to program her to move, for example, using my mouse. I can make her wave at you. And then because it's got physics built in, if I let go of her hand, it'll drop to her side. And the cool thing is you can program the physics as well. So you can change which direction gravity is moving in. You can change the strength of the gravity. You can add wind to it so her hair can start blowing. It starts to get very cool very quickly. And you can also start programming in keyboard shortcuts and things using other MIDI inputs. So for example, she's programmed her hand shapes will change when I press different buttons on the keyboard. Very simple, I know, but it starts to get very cool when you start to mess around with it. We did a animated Mr. Bean live on Facebook where we played charades with the Mr. Bean fan base. So we were literally animating Mr. Bean live and getting people on Facebook to guess what he was doing. So it's pretty cool. And then stylistically as well, you can start to get really very creative. So this is one of the most basic rigs that you can just download off Adobe, but you can also start to mess around with, does anybody like Aardman? So rather than just drawing in your character, just making it 2D, this puppet, for example, is a stop-motion puppet in real life, which has been photographed and then chopped into pieces in Photoshop and put into Character Animator. So in exactly the same way as the previous puppet, he is lip-syncing to what I say, he is moving around as I move around. He's also got a little bit of a head turn. So as I turn my head, he's turning his head as well. And then similarly, he's also got hand shapes and things which I can add. For some reason, this rig has a mouse in it. Again, you can just download this offline and he can squeeze it as well, just for fun. So it gets, when you start to get creative with it, it starts to get really, very good. This is going out through NDI, so this is being mixed. This is going out with an alpha channel, so obviously you're seeing it on screen next to me, but you can start to mix it up in fun ways. There was a Simpsons broadcast, for example, where Homer Simpson was answering fans' questions live on broadcast, and in the background, on another level in the mixer, they had actual Simpsons animation in the background, so things like Snowball the cat was causing chaos and Bart was running all over the place. So it kind of augmented the whole thing because it created this animated universe which you were interacting with live. And similarly, interviews at the moment are sort of quite in. Stephen Colbert has done it with animated Trump, animated Putin, and I think Hillary Clinton as well during the presidential race. But for example, there's a lot of examples on YouTube of gamers sort of adding it to their live gaming. And there's one guy who I've actually seen who he plays racing games on YouTube, and he'll stream that. And while he's playing the game with one hand, he's making stupid animated things happen with his other hand. And it's kind of wizardry. So it starts to get very fun very quickly.
Brilliant, thanks so much. And again, if anybody's got any questions about that, we'll have an opportunity a little bit later on. But I think that's an amazing demonstration because the whole point about streaming is content. You have to have content. And we asked Judah along because we thought this was just a brilliant way to generate, attractive and funny and amusing and engaging content. Who would have thought that you could do animation, which traditionally takes, hundreds of times longer than real time? Who would have thought you could do it on stage with in the middle of a live performance? Absolutely incredible. Thanks for that. We'll come back to you a little bit later. So, Alex, we asked you here because, look, everybody's had the experience, everybody who's tried streaming has had the experience of maybe producing some wonderful content, but nobody sees it. What are the rules of engagement? How do we start to build an interest in what we're doing so that we build an audience and make it all worthwhile?
Sure. I think the biggest problem that I've come up against with live streaming and streaming in general is retaining an audience. It's keeping the audience engaged throughout for at least a period of time. I mean, some dive in for 10 seconds, some can be there for minutes, but it's all about how you keep them engaged. And for example, we've been running now, 10 minutes. If somebody's just come in now, it's very hard to keep teasing something for the end. Be like, oh, wait to the end, you might get to see the animation again, or something like that. So retaining an audience is very difficult, but where it becomes easier is through making sure you're using the platforms as what they're intended for, which is kind of like a 360, the way I see it is like a 360-degree organism, where live streaming is only a tiny percentage of the overall usage of the platform. So whether it's YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, whatever it may be, you can all drive towards, if your intention is to be a live streamer, make sure you're using all the other modes within that platform to drive through to a live stream, and make sure you're consistent with it. So say stories, uploading regular stories, saying that you've got a live stream. And I believe we had it here where you could set schedule a stream. So those are being really popular at the moment. And then also like using your feed posts and the more traditional style that you like uploading Instagram. But make sure you're all doing it for one purpose and one cohesive reason to drive through to the stream at the end.
So really you have a multifaceted approach, and each facet of what you do adds to the momentum, I guess.
Exactly, and it's all about momentum, and that's why consistency is key, because as soon as you take your foot off the pedal, the algorithm and all these complicated reasons that I don't completely understand means that your content is then shown to a smaller percentage of your audience, and you have to build it back up again until you're back at peak.
You're up against so many things, aren't you? There is the actual set of algorithms that the streaming platforms use, but there's also the organic algorithm, which is how people behave.
Sure,
isn't it? And I guess you have to use a bit of psychology, a bit of cajoling, a bit of incentives.
Yeah, I mean, you can train an audience on social media to do anything. If every day you say to your audience, and you provide them with a reward, I mean, it's just simple human nature, I guess. But if you say, if you comment on this video, you might get a follow, or you might get a reward of some sort. The same can be done for live streams. If you guys, whoever waits until like at the end of the live stream, I'm going to do a giveaway, I'm going to do something like that. It's a way of retaining your audience and training them so that every time you're live, then they'll be waiting to see if there's something at the end. And
so it just occurs to me that one of the things that you should strive to do is work out what your own goals are.
Yeah.
If you don't know what your own goals are, then you can't build momentum towards those goals, can you?
Exactly, and that's where brands really struggle with content. I used to work for an esports team, and one of our biggest struggles there was we had one page and we had 12 different games that we were trying to promote on that page. So whichever game you put up, you alienate the other 60, 80% of your audience, and as a result, your overall engagement and the way that the social platforms look at your performance in general is really low, even though there's like, I guess it's a similar thing to this. There's a niche within this room who are perhaps interested in animation and perhaps interested in the more technical side, and then like the social media side. You're always going to alienate. So if as a brand you can be cohesive and know exactly what you're after from the beginning, that's when social media becomes slightly easier, and that's why the influencers do so well, because everyone knows what they're going to get, and as a result, they keep coming back for it.
So in a way, the influencers, they're a kind of comforting, reassuring, consistent embodiment of the brand.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, they're brands in themselves, but once you start selling something and you have 15 different products, that's when it becomes difficult, because each one of those is most likely to have a slightly different audience, and therefore the content will resonate with them only and not the others, and that's where it's a bit of a minefield.
So I just want to say that was all valuable information. Fantastic, thanks. I just want to say a little bit about the actual process of, how do you create content that looks good? I think to the individual creators, you have to have something in mind. You have to know what it is that you're going to produce and why you want to produce it. But I'm just going to say a couple of basic things, because, at RedShark we've done quite a few productions now, streamed or recorded. But just pay attention to the basics. And they're so basic you might wonder why I'm saying this, but please do pay attention to this, because it really does give you a better result. And that is, make sure that your audio is okay. If people can't hear what you're saying, they're not going to stick around. And audio is so hard to get right. You can get it right, but you need to practice. You need to be prepared to have the right equipment. You have to look at the acoustics. I mean, the reason that we're using these mics is because we're not in a recording studio, so we don't have a dead, quiet acoustic environment. So we need to be able to do that a bit if we need to compensate for a car going past outside or something like that. Pay attention to the audio. If you haven't got intelligibility, it doesn't matter how good your pictures are, nobody's going to stick with you. And talking about pictures, don't be misled into thinking because it's only a stream, you don't have to capture in high quality. And the way, I think, to understand this is to think of, here's a thought experiment. So imagine you've got Julia, and you want to do a painting of Julia, and you have the real Julia here, and next to her you have a Lego model of Julia. Now, which one are you going to use for your painting? You're going to use the real one, aren't you? And that's the equivalent of maybe shooting on a really horribly awful web camera and shooting on one of these lovely beasts and getting a fantastic looking picture. People say 4K doesn't make any difference. It absolutely does. 8K makes a difference even if you're watching on an iPhone. That's maybe a bit extreme, but I remember when HD first came out and I was watching, what was it, ER. Do you remember ER? It's a very popular American hospital series. And they started shooting it in HD. Not showing it in HD, they weren't delivering it in HD, but they started shooting it in HD. And even watching it in standard definition, it suddenly looked a lot better. So, and the principle is very simple. The more information you capture, the more information is going to stay there. So if you capture something and there's like, you know, a feature on somebody's face or something like that, which is only visible in 4K, which you would only have captured in 4K, there will still be signs of it in HD. If you had shot that in HD, it wouldn't have been there in the first place. Do you see what I mean?
There's some studies around that, and they couldn't actually prove why that effect is there. But when I started out in production, it was when HD just started. Yeah. We were delivering standard definition, but shooting in HD, and it always looked better than if we just shot it in standard definition. Yeah. And likewise, 4K to HD, and when 4K comes the norm and down, but it's a bizarre effect.
and I remember watching some 8K recently. A friend of ours at RedShark, Phil Holland, shoots in actually like 12K or something. He actually lashes cameras together and hangs them out of a helicopter and then flies over Manhattan. And I played the 8K file on my 4K monitor, and it looked better than any 4K picture I'd ever seen.
But there's another reason to do that as well. If you're capturing a larger raster, if you're capturing 4K or 8K and you're going to an HD raster, you're able to pick a region of interest that you want, exactly, or do an effective zoom and keep your resolution, so you can fix it in post.
Well, we start doing that in the TriCaster now. We can do exactly that live within sources. So we had a 4K camera, we can create multiple HD and do all sorts of mad things with that while we're live. So.
All kinds of benefits. So when you're thinking about budgets, obviously there's no need to go for 8K at the moment, but certainly if you can shoot in 4K, it's going to give you amazing results. But just the final thing I'm going to say is, don't expect to get amazing results if you haven't got any light on your subject. So I think we're sort of lulled into a false sense of security by the amazing capabilities of smartphones. But ultimately, if there's no light there, you're not going to get a great picture. And absolutely spend some budget and some time getting the lights right. And that's probably the most important thing. If you shoot in the dark, it's going to be terrible. These lights are very good in here. And that's actually going to make all the difference. So just, you know, that's stuff that should be common sense, but for the best of reasons isn't common sense. So please consider that when you're planning your publications, your productions, and they'll look a a lot better.
As I'm saying, it's like the order of importance. You know, sound first, picture, and probably lighting last. But if you can get all three together, it's just going to be a fantastic bit of content. Then you can just focus on what the content is rather than worrying about the quality of it. You know, just get that right. You can do it very, very easily and very, very quickly now if you want.
It's just essential, isn't it? Yeah. So, so you've got all these aspects of you've got content. You've got to produce your content. Obviously, you've got to watch out for quality and intelligibility with it, and then you've got to look at engagement and awareness. You know, if something is not people are not aware of something. We've lost the audio for this night. Questions? Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to questions. I'll just let you think about this. If you've got any questions about how do you start, how do you even start to plan a stream? How do you make sure it goes well? How do you get people to know it's there? Or even just tell us about some streaming project that you're working on. Does anyone want to kick off? Who's got the first question? That's awesome. So I'm just going to keep talking until somebody thinks of a question. Look, I think one of the things that people are not always aware of with this technology is that it's actually come further than people perhaps expect. Do you know what I mean? That unless you keep your eye on the ball all the time, stuff. So what's happened in the last 10 years? What are the things that have happened in the last 10 years?
I mean, from my perspective, I mean, obviously resolutions are constantly increasing. I mean, you've already mentioned 8K. That's something that's already a challenge we're having to start facing. But I think in the last few years, the shift towards working within a network, doing things within software, not using traditional expensive hardware to deliver live content, that's been a really big shift.
I think that's
and something we've done for quite a while. It's
really
kind of at the right time for us. Yeah.
There's another word for what you're talking about, which is actually virtualization. I know that's a kind of really abstract word, but the more you think about it, things are going into the cloud, they're going into the network. One of the things that NDI does is it actually virtualizes inputs and outputs. So when you look at the back of a normal video switcher, you see like hundreds of inputs, loads of outputs, and with NDI, you don't need them there because all the signals are on the cable.
Yeah, I mean, like every cable we've got here could be carrying 6 high-definition video feeds in each way, or 2 4K. We can go beyond that if we want. But as you say, yeah, it's almost like a type of virtualization within the network. We're taking what would be traditional A to B cables for video or audio and bringing it into one fabric, which does mean that, my laptop there could be a source. It could be a camera, but it's also our display. It could be our teleprompter. We can bring Adobe's Creative Cloud tools in as part of that. So your editing and your post-production side becomes a part of the same infrastructure. And as opposed to worrying about how are you going to get this source to work with this Vision Mixer, live stream this esports game, or this random iPhone source if you want, once you're in an NDI environment on that network, you can just say, well, today I want to use this camera for this video, or maybe I want to use it for a Skype call, and so on. And you can stop worrying about how you're going to achieve it and actually focus on being creative. And I think that's the great thing about all this. It opens up that creative opportunity, as we saw with character animator just now.
I'll come to you in a second, Mark. Thanks, Liam. Alex, if I said to you, right, I want to become like, an incredibly famous, producer of content, and I actually at this stage don't have a clue how to do it. How would you kind of step by step? What steps would you take to be able to produce content, promote it on social media?
Sure, I think it's a massive learning curve. I think it kind of ties into what you guys are saying as well about the technology and also the accessibility of the technology to a mass group of people. People's content, and it's something that I struggle to keep up with, is becoming more and more just better quality and much more better lighting, audio, sound, everything's, visual and sound. It's all becoming incredibly advanced now, which I would say don't worry. I know this is probably contradictory to what you've been saying, but don't worry so much about initially how it looks. Just find your point of difference in terms of content to everyone else, and then the rest will just...
I actually don't think it is contradictory, because you're talking about knowing what it is you want to do. The rules about, you know, making it look as good as you can will always apply, but you're absolutely right. Just don't hold back just because you don't have every technical issue sorted.
Yeah, and obviously everyone's got a phone and everyone's got the ability to produce content now. It's becoming more saturated in the more generic things, so such as comedy, beauty. So it's within those niches, where can you execute on kind of a unique standpoint that will give you a point of difference? I think one of the best case examples was Ninja, one of the original streamers on Fortnite, and going from... he was a Halo streamer originally, and then he saw that Fortnite was coming up and he believed in it, and he was one of the first people, and early adopters of platforms always do well. And so, for example, if you wanted to become big at the moment, my advice would be go on to TikTok, which is a completely new platform which is blowing up at the moment. It's got a very young audience, but early adopters will always capitalize on the infancy of a platform before they start to change the algorithm and make it harder for people to earn money and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, fantastic. Well, look, we've just got time for some questions now. Yeah, so Matt, can you...
Yep.
So we're just sending the
Oh,
audience...
sorry, another point, by the way, make sure you use really good batteries in wireless mics.
Yeah.
Hello, I have one question about the Chroma King. If you people know about the Chroma King, the background, the green screen. Does really NDI supports the Chroma King, or maybe through Adobe Creative Cloud?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Sure. NDI itself, and it's a really good question about that. NDI itself has always supported Chroma King. So if we had a green screen background here, we could replace that in a second with whatever we want. One thing we've just announced now is the ability to record NDI natively to disk. So all of our production systems, our free software tools will allow you to record any source. So if we want to record Mark's bird dog camera, we can record that. If we had it on a green screen, we could add a key on the TriCaster and record that too. We will actually take that chroma key or that alpha channel now, we'll embed that in the recording, and then with an upcoming plugin for Adobe Premiere, you'll then actually be able to bring in any source from anywhere on the network, keyed, unkeyed, color corrected, however you want to make it work, any resolution, and then you can then bring that into Adobe Premiere, and you'll be able to do immediate multicam sync, including the alpha channel while you were producing. It's a bit of a game changer for us, but we'll then be able to start bringing all that post side in. What I will add quickly is things like the character animator demo. That's relying on our free Creative Cloud plugin. You can just download that off our website and enable all of your Creative Cloud apps to become part of this sort of production environment, and use Alpha Channel and do even more creative stuff live as well.
Yeah, that's what we did this afternoon. It's a new laptop, so we literally just went onto the website, download, boom, working. Yep. Beautiful.
Yeah, it was up online in a couple of seconds, I think. So.
Literally. And the nice thing about the Premiere as well is because then it plays into Adobe's Dynamic Link server. Yep. So things like Character Animator, they work through that as well. So you can record in Character Animator as well, and you can bring that straight into Premiere for more post things, or also After Effects.
Yeah, and speed grade as well, and all of that can become part of that. So if we wanted to, we could have a live editor here as part of our show, editing a highlights package while we're here right now, and at the end press play on a timeline, and that could be playing us out. Didn't have enough time to organise that today, but next time we'll do.
Okay, who's next? Somebody else was going to ask. Yeah.
Oh, it's not the batteries.
Hello?
Yeah.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
So you've talked a lot about resolution. But I have curiosity, what would you have to change about this setup to be able to stream in HDR? Or, and I hate to even ask it, vertical video?
Vertical video, yeah.
We just added vertical video support to the TriCaster. So you can stream square, you can stream vertical for Instagram. It's now a mode that we're now fully supporting. Within the setup we've got here, we could take almost any resolution, any frame rate, any shape. We could have vertical video or square. It doesn't matter. We can mix the whole lot together and output to any of those platforms that you want.
And what about HDR?
We've just announced that NDI now supports 16-bit colour, which is well within the range for HDR. I will say that at the moment there's so many competing formats for HDR out there in the world that we're just taking a little bit of a back seat until things settle down a bit. You know, you've got, I could list about 8 different flavours of HDR right now which are not cross-compatible. They all do their own different things. They all have their own metadata attached. NDI is fully capable of it. But it's just, you know, right now, it's just, you know, there's a lot going on out there in that space, and you know, we're sticking within standard colour spaces, but we could do it if we want to. So.
Okay, any other questions? Brilliant. Well, look, thanks ever so much for sitting through this. I know it's just unbearably hot, so I really do appreciate that so many people have come, and Berlin is an incredible place. It's an amazing place, and it's an incredible technology hub as well. You know, there's such a positive vibe here in the tech industry. So thanks to, you know, Berlin for hosting us. We're coming back again soon, and thanks everybody. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thanks.
Yeah, tungsten.